I will be very careful this time about not hitting my mic. Okay, something's fucked up with the port or something, and I'm a poor man and I can't afford to buy a whole new Yeti, but, I probably won't hit it again. Alright, the Jade Saga. To be honest, I've been planning to review this trilogy for quite a long time, even before I read the first book. Unfortunately, I also finished it like 2 months ago during my short hiatus from this channel. So please forgive me if my memory is flagging somewhat, and just don't even accuse me. The reason I'd made this a spoiler-free review wasn't just because I would have to be less specific. That's just not true. That's just wrong. Anyway, the Jade Saga is incredible on like so many levels. The story itself is very nuanced and very sprawling. There's arcs, there's sub-arcs, there's individual character arcs, some that aren't even POVs but still have really in-depth arcs. And it's literally all over the place, as in like all over the world. Yet everything is strung together so wonderfully into the main arc. Fonda Lee's prose is very, conservative. Like, things aren't described in that much detail, and if they are, it's with very, dry language. Like, rather than her raven black hair float over her shoulders like a waterfall of ink, flew along the breeze like a wave of shadow, gold bands containing it at even intervals. It would be something like her black hair was tied back with gold bands or something. Absolutely nothing wrong with that, obviously. In fact, I think this is the exact kind of prose that is needed to tell such a sprawling and complicated story. I think it just within a reasonable amount of time. I would say this idea of efficient, dry prose really stretches to the characters themselves too. Their inward voices aren't that different from one another. I feel like you can always kind of hear the author writing in there somewhere. Yet that only made it more impressive when you realize just how well characterized they are, and how much you get a sense of what their personalities are, despite them, acting pretty flat, maybe, comparatively. These are complicated, rich people, and that screams off the page, despite their actions and motives and thoughts being very plainly, laid out. And a lot of what I think makes them stand out, other than, the just personality from moment to moment, is the setting that they're in. The Jade Saga mostly takes place on this hypothetical country called Kekon, where a magical mineral called jade was discovered thousands of years ago. And wearing jade gives you fucking magic powers, right? This is where the fantasy and urban fantasy comes in. You can jump high. You have lots of fucking defense, or, whatever. You can deflect shit, etc. Naturally, having equipable magic thousands of years ago would mean that wizards would show up. And obviously, eventually, the wizards would feud over this magic pebble, right? And then cut forward a few millennia or generations or whatever, and here we are, where the wizards have become wizard gangsters, wizard mafiosos, okay? Mafiosos of Wizardly Place or whatever. So I approached the Jade Saga kind of knowing that general hook, right? This is Godfather meets Yakuza meets fucking magic pebbles. So I had very specific expectations because Sopranos is in my top 3 shows, right? So I'm like, okay, what can they do with this? How can the mafia setting be different with magical rocks? And the interesting part is that a lot of the way that the gangsters act isn't that different. So it's just kind of speculative fiction about what if instead of feuding over cocaine or whatever, it's the fucking magic pebble from that Penguin movie. And it's super interesting, and I think that it meets all those expectations. It blew me out of the water. It was exactly what I would want from a mafia story. There's bloodshed, murder, deep characters who you want to hate but have to love. Hero Alone is one of my favorite protagonists in any book. He's a fucking monster objectively, but that's what makes seeing him do anything fun, right? It's one of those stories where you root for one side simply because you're experiencing it from their perspective. If we had a POV directly tied to the Mountain Clan the whole time and they were super personable, I think that would be a pretty two-way street for fans. You know what I mean? But it's not really painted that way. It's not choose a team. It's this is the protagonist team. Most impressive, though, is the world building. These 3 books span not just Kekon, not just a continent, though that's where most of it takes place, but multiple continents on this planet. It spans not just years, but fucking decades, all while keeping track of this heavily stitched tapestry of characters waving plot lines and themes. There's just so much that has to make sense and has to work at every given moment. So many characters that have to have their motives link in with certain totally different storylines or foreshadowing that has to make sense, 2 books later. It's crazy. Whole generations of people come to be important, and yet it still works. It's some of the best broad scale writing I've ever seen. Like Wheel of Time level shit where you're just like, my mind does not function like this. I can't imagine just like unraveling a whole functioning fucking story. This is not normal. Like this is exemplary, I think, especially with the 3rd book. I'm reading it and like I'm enjoying it. I was like, this is a cool book and I like it, but then like when I step outside of myself and really think about what Fonda Lee is accomplishing here, it blows my fucking mind. I kind of want to like go and look into her and see if she's talked about the process at all, because I'm sure it was just like outlines upon outlines. It's just like editors being like, yeah, this doesn't work, and then like, but there's so much that I'm sure they missed shit. She would catch it. It's just probably so much back and forth, or maybe she did it all on her own and just had really concise notes. I have no idea, but it's got to be a lot, because as far as I can tell, and maybe she did fuck something up, but there's just so much and I didn't notice. But as far as I can tell, this is a dense, multi-character, multi-nation, multi-decade story that is somehow like continuously flowing and working. Fucked up. Like this book, just for raw like appreciation, should be studied. Just like, you read Great Gatsby and you might not like it, but it's like that fucker what's his head really did something. That fucker who wrote that stupid ass book? Very hard to specify much on this front without spoiling anything, but, believe me, this speculative planet is just as, like, real and flourishing and believable as our real life fucking boring Earth. This series has it all. Like, it is deep. It is sprawling. It tells a lot, but at the same time, it has martial arts and magic and lots of action and lots of simple storylines. Like, I feel like you could kind of look past some of them, and they're necessary and integral to the plot, but I do think that this series has a lot of surface-level entertainment value to go on top all of that. I mean, the magic is very scaled down, which was kind of like the biggest upset for me. When you go into it, you're going into an urban fantasy that is far more urban than fantasy, right? That said, when it does use magic, it gives us some excellent combat and like great action scenes, quick snappy prose, fucking powerful. So if you want some magic and some gangsters and some wizards and some like martial arts and some Godfather and some Yakuza and some pebbles and a lot, look no further than this 9.0 trilogy right here.